All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back with you this week on Shootin the Shizzat, the top pro wrestling podcast out of the Nordics of Europe. And this week we've got a special guest, a very special guest with us, the very first promoter of Finnish professional wrestling domestically here in Finland back in 2003, which is when I started training people for pro wrestling. My first class was in 2003. Then there's still a couple of guys, Finnish guys, wrestling on the circuit nowadays from that class. Johnny McMetal being one of them, the other one being Stark Adder, who is the current Nordic wrestling champion. And the promoter at that time was a guy called Patrick Pesola. And Pat's on the line nowadays. He's an aviation pilot. I believe that he's stuck in Moscow, Russia, because of the coronavirus quarantine. But anyway, Patrick, what's happening?
All right. So I'm just a little bit blushing here, and thank you for the humbling introduction. Really appreciate that. And yeah, that's correct. The Moscow Marauder here stuck in good old Russia, Mother Russia at the moment, because all the borders are closed. And we're unable to do our crew change as I'm a private jet captain.
Wow, you're a private jet. Who do you fly for?
Well, that's obviously confidential as we sign contracts, but a certain individual, a high net worth individual who owns 3 different aircraft and has a large family spread up, mostly in the U.S. and in the East. And we're kind of flying here in the middle. And we fly between East and West, connecting the family and a person who needs actually the 3 aircraft. So, yeah, it's a world where everything is connected by a private jet. Within hours, you're, crossing 5 different countries within Europe, or even in, 10 hours, you're going from, let's say, here in Moscow to east coast of North America. So, yeah, the world is connected through private jets or aircraft. That is throughout the world. So here I am.
So, Pat, you got into aviation. Was it like after you stopped promoting wrestling? Because the thing is that I remember it was 2003 and it was September and no, it was August and September that you ran 2 shows, and those are the first inaugural pro wrestling shows in Finland, and that was Culture Shock. The first one, the second one being Baltic Brawl. And I remember we brought in some pretty big names that have gone on to become pretty big names. AJ Styles being one of them. There was we had Sabu here. We had Shane Douglas here. We had a lot of people that were pretty notable in the wrestling industry. Now, what made you want to become a pro wrestling, how could you say, promoter / and also co-pioneer alongside myself in the pro wrestling industry here in the Nordics? What made you want to do that?
Well, that's a very good question, and yeah, if any time I ramble on or anything, just cut me off, and let's get to the point. Obviously, I'm a little bit nervous. Haven't done the last time I did this was in 2010. I don't know if you ever saw that tape of that was actually a video interview. I forget who did it. But anyway, back to the question. Long story short, I used to actually, I don't know if Buck remembers or not, but I used to host it was called a fight night that I used to host at the nightclubs in Finland, in Helsinki. Basically, a few years before we did those fight nights, I used to organize, I was a promoter for parties like, Halloween party, New Year's party, Cinco de Mayo, and all kinds of summer parties. And I would just rent out, for example, the beach in Finland, at the main beach in Helsinki. I mean, we fenced it out and looked for sponsors, and it was all about getting girls, obviously, all the parties. So as one does. So that's where I met this Belgian guy who was a MMA fighter guy. And he saw me, doing these parties and saw how I organized them and whatnot, and got the sponsors for them, mostly, energy drinks and whatnot. yeah, so me and him just started talking, and we got a ring, and there was a place called Highlight Cafe, and other places we just started hosting the fights, and I promoted them. It was like a co-venture with the gentleman then, and I placed the flyers and the posters all around the city, and they weren't very successful, I would say. Not a lot of people came, maybe 100 plus per night or 200. But, it was always like they would give you like a Wednesday night, not peak Friday nights or Saturdays, obviously. So it was the middle of the week. There were some of those. And then I was going back and forth between U.S. and Finland with I was already doing the pilot school actually then. And 9/11 happened. And that changed everything pretty much for myself, where I had to think, because the pilot school kind of got put on hiatus. Because there was no jobs, basically. So I couldn't finish all of my training. And that's when I really started looking at other things. And then when WWE came to Finland in 2002, I think Buck remembers that. I don't know if he actually went there or not.
I was there.
Okay, my apologies if I don't remember. But I was there with another gentleman who actually built our ring. The monster of a ring that we had. And I was with him. He's a good childhood friend of mine, another entrepreneur person. And we were there, and that kind of, I saw it was sold out. The whole place was sold out, and I saw how the people reacted, and me going in the US for all the, at the time, WWF and WCW events when I was a kid. And I just kind of saw the spark that there could be something, for the genre, for Finland and Scandinavia and Europe for that matter. I started doing researching, went to forums, and I would ask people about, hey, what if I, start this promotion, and, what should be named, or would it succeed, and so on. And I put a feeler out, and there was a guy called Boogie, I think is
Boogie Mustonen.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then somebody told me about him. And then I honestly do not remember, because just to backtrack, I had a horrible car accident on June 2019 at my home in Florida. And a drunk driver hit me, basically. And I had a severe concussion. I hit my head 3 times with the car rolling over and all that stuff. Which also, I was also sidelined from my pilot work for 5 months because I lost my pilot's license due to multiple other injuries. But and even before the accident, me and Michael were actually supposed to meet in Finland to do this interview in person. And unfortunately, that didn't happen because the aircraft I was flying at the time for a Middle Eastern sheikh, the aircraft got taken away from the maintenance earlier. So I had to pick up the plane a week earlier than I was supposed to, or a couple of weeks earlier than I was supposed to meet Michael in Helsinki. So long story short, we're here now. So back to the story. So like I said, I don't remember exactly how, because what I kind of remember is this StarBuck contacted me through like instant messages through the forum. And
No, what it was that I actually made a review of the Helsinki SmackDown show, which was headlined, by the way, by Rey Mysterio and Edge versus Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit in the tag straps. That was the main event. And I remember I sent a review of that show into the Wrestling Observer website, and Dave Meltzer ran that review, and then Eric Isaacson from Norway contacted me and said that, hey, I saw your review. I didn't know that there's a guy who's done pro wrestling in Finland. And then he said that there's a guy in Finland named Patrick Pesola who had reached out to me, Eric that is, and asked me about possibly coming in and doing some training in Finland, but I can't do it because of my job. And he said that you should reach out to Patrick, and I can give him, give Patrick or give you Patrick's information if you'd like. I said, yeah, sure, hit me up. That's how we got.
Right. No, I remember now. When I was doing the research, I was reaching out to certain people. I guess it was one was Eric, and that was an amazing gentleman, by the way, and maybe one other one in Denmark, if I remember correctly as well. But I was just trying to kind of gauge the, just get some professional advice, basically.
But the thing is that, Patrick, I got to tell you, you're reaching out to Osbjorn Rees in Denmark. That was right. That's the second. How could you? Or no, I would say the Danish Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So you're reaching out to him, and he can't wrestle worth a freaking lick, and everybody knows that. And the thing is that, I mean, I know Boogie very well, and the thing is that Boogie's, I would say he's like a friend of mine, but even admittedly, Boogie said that, I mean, he went to wrestling school in Australia, and that was in the early 90s, and he said that he doesn't know what the hell they taught him because he couldn't wrestle a lick. So in that way, you talk to two guys, you're like, right. I understand that, of course, when you don't have anything to go on, you're looking for anything that can take you to the bank. So I can't slight you there, but it's a good thing that you didn't like hook up with either one of these guys, because the thing is that they wouldn't have brought nothing to the table for you. And Eric could have. And then there was that guy, Johnny Houtemäki. You remember him? Johnny Merlin?
Oh, correct.
Yeah, so
right.
Johnny Merlin, who I guess you'd been in contact with also, and Johnny had done some training camps with Greg Valentine
exactly.
and with and beat Brian Blair in Florida. But the thing is that from what I understood, they'd only just been like training camps, and he hadn't really had like actual match experience, to my knowledge. So the thing is that it was really tough to find somebody outside of, let's say, Eric Isaacson at that point that could have gone all the way with you as far as what you wanted to do. I know we're not giving Dylan a chance to talk here for a second, but we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
No, I'm loving. I'm learning history here, so it's great. Absorbing it. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, so that's like the beginnings of pro wrestling. That was 2003. I think it was November of 2002, actually, that WWE was here for the first time, if I remember correctly. And that was the Hartwell Arena. They drew over 10,000 people, and it was like damn near sold out. I remember even back then, that was when John Cena was still coming up in the business. They made John Cena be the ass clown of that show, because the thing is, after the main event, they had the heels run in, and Cena was one of the heels, and then he got caught when all the other heels got bumped out, and all of the faces gave him their signatures. So John Cena was the ass clown, taking the stink face from Rikishi and taking all the bumps and all that. It's funny when you think of what became of John Cena, but in Helsinki, he was the total class, the buffoon of the class. So, but that said, that was our introduction to to pro wrestling in the Nordics. Here was through Eric Isaacson, and I gotta, I'll always be thankful to Eric for tipping me off about that. And then I got a hold of you. I sent a message to you. I left it on your answering machine, actually.
Right.
And then I said, give me a call. And I think it was either later that day or then the following day you gave me a call back, and then we met up and we talked shop. That was the beginnings of it.
Yeah, I do specifically remember the actual meeting at my workplace where I was working at that time through my business. Because basically I had a staffing company at that time as well. I don't know if you remember or not, but I had I was employing or hiring people to different restaurants and nightclubs and throughout the region or area of Helsinki, basically. I remember the meeting, and I'm just trying to remember, was there also Mika as well? Mika, first meeting.
Mika Siikkilä.
Yeah, I think it was in the first meeting as well. Or was it just me and you?
Or it might have been, because the thing is, Mika, who ran a music, I guess like band booking office called Bast Music.
Correct.
That's BAST.
Yep.
Yeah, Bast Music Agency. And the thing is that in 2001, 2002, I was, of course, and I still do front this band called Stoner Kings. But back then, we just released our first album, Brimstone Blues, in 2001. And we were signed to Mika's booking office, and I was actually doing some bookings for him. The thing is, I brought Ronnie James Dio to Finland. I brought Cannibal Corpse. I brought Napalm Death and some other acts and whatnot. And I think I was even working on Motorhead at that time. But anyway, the thing is that, long story short, yeah, so Mika for a while there was interested in also being a part of the pro wrestling business behind the scenes and maybe doing a managerial gig on the side.
Right. Yeah. But I do remember that meeting, and like I said, I do apologize. Having a grade 3 class concussion, my memory has been really bad ever since that accident. So I've been trying today, ever since I got the message from Buck about 6 hours ago that we're going to have this. So I've been trying to kind of brainstorm here about the events, 17 years ago. So I'll do my best, of course. But I remember the meeting was really good. And I remember the meeting, talking about the name. I recall Battleground Valhalla coming fruition during that meeting.
Yeah, that was my idea, because the thing is that
yes,
I thought to myself, like, what's a Nordic name? What would be a name that would be inherently Finnish or inherently Nordic? And the thing is that when you think of pro wrestling, it has to be something that resonates not just regionally in your area, but when you talk about pro wrestling from the Nordic sector of Europe, it has to resonate with the world. And I thought to myself that Valhalla being the heaven of the Vikings, and so that's so iconic of Nordic culture that it's a no-brainer to me. And then I thought Battleground, because at that time there were these different companies coming up, and they had been around for a bit. Like, for example, Genichiro Tenryu's SWS, which was I forget what that even stood for, but it was these almost weird names, Frontier Martial Arts, FMW, and they didn't have the word wrestling in them. Per se, the word wrestling, like the National Wrestling Alliance or American Wrestling Association, AWA, NWA, it didn't have that how could you say that resonance to it. And that's where I thought that if you just call it Battleground Valhalla, it might stand out. And then we went with that for a bit, and then you had the idea to change that a bit and tweak it to Valhalla Pro Wrestling, because because we kept Battleground Valhalla as the name of the training school that we held in Kerava, Finland, and then the name of the promotion, in Savio at what was it, the Klondike Building, and then the name of the promotion then would be Valhalla Pro Wrestling VPW.
Yeah, we got off the ground actually. It was Dylan, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I just wanted to just make sure I got the name correct. Dylan, we got off the ground actually pretty quickly because we had that meeting with StarBuck. It was just after the event, so it was around November 2002, and by January 2003, we already had these kind of I would rent these conference rooms or seminar places at a hotel, what's the word? Not like a ballroom, but they were conference rooms, basically.
Yeah, they were conference rooms. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
And we put that stuff up so quickly. I bought an ad out at different newspapers and whatnot, and I promoted it on the forums and whatnot, and we were able to get. That's right. We made posters. Yes, we made posters, and we brought them to these different, boxing clubs and martial art studios and whatnot, and the word got around, and there were actually a fair amount of people at these. The seminars, right? And it was really hastily put together, but somehow we pulled it off. And that was basically our kind of headhunting or scouting, because we had to build a roster. We had to, or at least was in my mind, that we had to start from scratch, but we had to find the players because we had none. That at least I knew of that time in Finland.
No, we had nobody.
Right. So we held these, they lasted for about 3 months at different hotels. And, we had some in January, some in February, March, and I think the last ones were the first week of April. But, and then we would, I would do my what's the word now? Just kind of say about the promotion in a way, what was intended, what was planned, and whatnot. And then StarBuck would do his thing about the training and what it would kind of entail, and what we were looking for in character wise and people wise, and what it also requires physically. And then at the end, we had these people would sign up if they were more interested, or they would just shake their hands and say, "Okay, thanks for coming by." And by the end of it, I think the 3 months we had them, I think we had about 20 people or 10-ish, something between 10 and 20. Plus, people were able to send VHS tapes. They were sending to my home address, which was the company address at the time. And we had, I don't know, maybe 10 tapes at least, if StarBuck remembers. But some of those tapes ended up at the training center. And yeah, there were some wild ones.
I remember this.
The twins from the north.
Yeah, Lukarinen brothers.
Yes.
Yeah, there was a couple of these. I don't know if, I guess they're country bumpkins.
Audition tapes. Yep.
Yeah, and they were wrestling in their bedroom.
Underwear. Yep, underwear.
Yeah, they're wrestling in their underwear.
Pajamas.
Yeah, and their pajamas, and they were body slamming each other on the bed and shit like that. It was downright hilarious, actually.
It was comical.
I think I have to see these tapes. I think I'm the one missing out here, because this sounds unbelievably good.
They were.
It wasn't backyard wrestling; it was bedroom wrestling.
I've done it.
Yeah, the only thing is, Dylan, when you did it, it was like we can forgive you because you were probably at that time under the age of 10.
Well, yeah, close to it anyway.
Okay, well, you're probably under the age of 14. So
yeah. Well, there you go.
There you go. So I mean, it's like if you're still a youngster, and you're it's kind of like you're entertaining your superhero fantasies and whatnot, then it's a bit different. But when you got guys that are in their 20s and they're still acting as if they were 13, it's like, yeah, I don't know, man. It's like we didn't sign them up, put it that way.
Sounds like it could be the next big gimmick for WWE, though, because they're doing these. It was, closed arena things. They might have to have some bedroom matches. So maybe they were just ahead of their time.
And Dylan, just imagine two guys dressed up in pajamas and underwear, looking like a couple of twins of Uncle Fester from the Addams Family, the 91 version, just throwing pillows at each other and body slamming. I mean, I never forget, opening those tapes and looking at popping it in, and just at my home, just dying laughing. And I know that's wrong to say, of course, but it was just good, good fun.
Yeah. But it's hard not to laugh at that kind of thing.
And then like I said, around April, I think 2003, we had the first class in place, and we had rented the place it was a place called Planet Fun in Finland, in Helsinki. North of Helsinki, for that matter, like an hour's drive. Used to be Rennie Harlan's, it was like an amusement park. Like an indoor amusement park that was operating for about 10 years, and they shot the Finnish Gladiators there as well, where Ludwig Borga, aka Tony Halme, was also participating in, ex-WWF wrestler from '93. So then we had that place there, and from there on we started kind of just building the brand, I would say. I mean, as best as we could. And then in May 2003, it was, I would say, the first of bad luck when StarBuck broke his ankle in a match in Oslo. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, that was freaking horrible. I've still got the X-ray pictures from that, by the way. And the thing is that I just moved now, and the thing is, during my move, I actually found my old my leg brace from that surgery, and I finally threw it out. It's like, why am I keeping this thing? It's like there's no there's no redeeming quality to me keeping this around. So I just threw it out. But yeah, the thing is that it was a rematch that I had against Eric Isaacson at this venue called Betong, which became almost like a cursed place for me because I got injured there, I think, like twice. And I actually rolled my other ankle a separate time. But anyway, the thing is that, that's where I got my ankle like shattered because it was a spot in the match where Isaacson, he got me out of the ring. So I'm on the outside and he climbed to the top rope basically and jumped like with a crossbody to the outside of the ring. And as I was turning around to catch him, the thing is that one of my legs buckled underneath me while the other one went straight. So I didn't turn enough in time that when his body came crashing on top of me, the timing was off. And had I been turned around completely, it would have been different because then there would have been no twisting or torquing on my supporting leg. But because I hadn't turned around in time, my supporting leg was the one that broke and snapped, like the tibia and the fibula, which are both of the bones in your ankle, because you have two bones that run through your ankle to your foot. Both of them snapped, and I felt it. Yeah, I felt it was almost like it was like like a bolt of lightning went through me, like through my leg, and it was like in that moment, molten lava, or then I would say like boiling hot oatmeal ran through my ankle in that moment as I felt it go. And I went down still with all the piss and the vinegar and the adrenaline and everything like that. I tried to stand up. I tried to steady myself against the ring apron. As soon as I got up, of course, my leg cannot hold me. It's broken. I fell right back down, and I yelled to the referee. I said, "My leg is broken. Count me out." There's nothing else I can do. I mean, just count me out. So the referee takes and he counts me out, and then I remember Zebra Kid was there, who was actually one of the sons of Ricky Knight. His name is Roy Beavis. He actually just retired now, but he was there wrestling also, and he was one of the guys that carted me out. They carried me to the back, because I was then taken to the hospital. My wrestling boot had to be cut off of my ankle, off my leg, because they could not pull it off. Like, they could not remove the laces and pull it. They had to cut it off. And it was brutal, because the thing is that I was brought to the hospital that very same night. I was put under anesthesia. They operated me that night, and then I woke up the next, whatever it was it the same night or in the morning, whatever it was, and I realized that I'm in the hospital. It's like, because I had no recollection.
Right.
And the thing is, because they'd put me under, but the thing is that, and I woke up, and finally the knowledge, the understanding that I'd been operated, dawned on me.
Yeah.
And I remember this is one of the most horrendous things that I've gone through is that when you have to take a piss, and it's like you've been sleeping for that time, and it's like there's this water that's built up in your bladder, and then you've got to take a piss, but the pain that starts setting in as you come out of anesthesia is so bad that the muscle at the end of your cock starts. Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. It's a cock, right? So it starts clamping up. It starts like seizing up. The piss canal literally starts seizing up as the piss tries to make its way through your cock and into the bedpan. It took me 2 hours to take a freaking piss on laying on my side to piss into the bedpan. And the worst fucking pain in my life that I'd felt up to that point. One of the worst pains anyway. I cannot describe it to you. But anyway, yeah, so that was the long and the short of it. But that kind of derailed me. And the start for Baltic Brawl, I was supposed to wrestle there against a Norwegian wrestler called Big John, who was actually a short guy, but ironically named Big John. And that was taken off the booking sheet because I was off the card because I was the booker for Valhalla. I was also the head coach and the booker. But anyway, the thing is that I had to pull myself off because I can't wrestle, right? So the thing is that then we did this tag match, and Big John, I forget who he wrestled on that show. I think it was Makoto. Might have been Makoto.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, from Japan. Via Spain. The guy lives in Madrid. So,
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but the thing is that so that was the beginnings of it. But so terrible start to pro wrestling in Finland. My auspicious debut. We'd done all the spots. We'd done that TV commercial. I think it was for Sub TV, or was it for
correct,
or for Sports Channel? Yeah.
Yeah. Because what happened was we had the ring ready around April. And the monster of a ring that Shane Douglas actually said that he's never seen. I always remember that at the training facility when he visited for Baltic Brawl in September. He's never seen such massive ring posts at the corners. So massive and sturdy, but that always stuck with me. But yeah, I remember we shot the commercials, and then you went for the to Oslo. And I never forget getting the call, and I was so devastated by what had happened. And but we were actually pretty quick on our feet because we were able to turn, like, let's say, a negative into a positive. And then we went to my family doctor, and we shot those promos of your ankle and how you're going to turn it into vengeance and this and that, and how we turned it into a storyline. Mm-hmm. So we made the best of what we could. But point being, that was definitely the beginning of the snowball effect in a way, which of course, I blame myself for kind of what happened afterwards. But basically, as a young guy, you don't have lots of patience, and you want to go. You don't want to wait. You don't want to build a company, for that matter, for let's say 10 years or 3 years or 5 or whatever in between. You just want to go to the end goal right away. So, I knew, because I remember we had discussions with, because basically I had 2 different people in the company as well who were on the board. And one was Mika Sikila, who was StarBuck's, off and on manager or whatever, however that thing was. And we had several discussions of, should we just build, with small events here and there for a couple of years and then do something bigger and whatnot, and which would have been obviously the right thing to go by. But I was overly ambitious, I would say, and just wanted to go right away to the big leagues, and make it, the best I thought it could be. So that's why we kind of, we had an event called Culture Shock, and that was kind of like the proof of concept, I would say, because that was also videotaped.
That was broadcast on the sports channel on Urheilukanava in Finland, right?
In Finland, yeah. And but before that, of course, the summer, we had that event at the old train station area in center, like downtown Helsinki, where I was for Sub TV, where there's it was supposed to be able to put the ring in there. And there's dudes on it in Finnish, of course. The
extreme dudesons. The extreme dudesons.
And there was supposed to be like a ring spot with StarBuck and them, and then we had Easy Rider and other people there. We had a thing that we were going to do with them, and then all the electricity went out, and that got killed.
Not just there. Yeah, but no.
The whole area.
No, we did it. We did it in the parking lot.
Outside. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is like it was Murphy's Law. It was like,
correct.
It was completely off the rails. The thing is, the electricity went out like an hour before showtime, so to speak, across the city. So it was a blackout. And we couldn't do it inside, so we went into the parking lot. We figured there was a shitload of people there. They'd already come, and the Dudesons were coming up. They were getting popular. They had their manager or their booker. His name was Juho Juoni. I remember that still. And the thing is that, and it ended up being me in a handicap match in the parking lot against Jarppi Leppälä and I forget what's the other name of the other guy there. Shit. Was it? Yeah. Anyway, but the tall guy with the longer hair, I forget. I forget his name now. Sorry, but so we did this thing, a big schmoz in the parking lot, and then we gave out free T-shirts to everybody. We had printed up these Valhalla Wrestling T-shirts, and then just to appease the people that came and whatnot. There's nothing, so it was a pretty rocky start to the beginning of pro wrestling in Finland. But Patrick, I got to ask you, because I remember I've said to everybody, I even put it in my book, Battleground Valhalla, I said that Patrick wanted to be the Vince McMahon of Scandinavia. Would that be an accurate description?
100%.
So why did you like? Because the thing is that you were so damn ambitious, and the thing is that now I don't know how much in depth you want to go into this. You can tell me that okay, I don't want to go into that kind of detail if you don't want to. But the thing is that it was made public record that Valhalla Pro Wrestling at the end of 2003 went bust, and it was in Kauppalehti, which is the main financial newspaper in Finland, that we were on the blacklist of businesses because we had failed to make payment to the tune of about 1 million old Finnish marks by the end of 2003. So the thing is that my question being, what made you put like that mass amount of money into the first? Okay, let's start from Culture Shock, because that was the first show in September 2003. So you brought in Kit Cash, AJ Styles, Sabu, Shane Douglas, some guys from the UK were on that card. Then there was some guys from Norway, Makoto. Yeah, Steve Carino. No, Carino was on that card. Yeah, that's right. And so, in other words, Sonny Siaki was there, from TNA and whatnot. Anyway, so you brought in a lot of people. There's a lot of flights, a lot of those are expensive flights. And a lot of those guys were asking for double pay because they were taking the entire weekend off where they could have had 2 dates or 3 dates in the U.S. They're coming over to Finland just to do 1 date. So they're asking you for double pay to do the date. And then the show draws in the neighborhood of, I think it was around 500-600.
No, it was actually sold out. That was actually sold out.
No, Pat, it wasn't sold. I remember because I was looking. I saw there's a lot of empty seats, but it was not sold out. There was a lot of people there though, but it was not sold out.
Either it was let's say we gave free tickets plus sold tickets combined, like as in it was packed, but I do remember because that one actually we made money on. That event made a profit.
Really? Because I remember
not
that
much.
I remember that after all the production costs, because you had the ramp, you had the entrance set up, you had like shit built for that. You had the big screen, you had like the TV camera crew, you had the announcers there, you had some lights, some special stage effects. I remember with all of the overhead that we actually ended up making a loss on that show.
Well, most of those things we actually were able to roll over to the next event. And that was the deal I made with the gentleman who provided a lot of the stuff. And that's why I made a profit, obviously, because we were able to roll a lot of those bills into the next event, which was Baltic Brawl a month later. And that's basically why I made a profit, obviously, because we didn't incur those costs there and then. But yeah, throughout that summer, I only had about 37,000, euros, obviously at that time of my own money that I had to put for the venture. So that's not obviously millions that you basically need, or hundreds of thousands, knowing aftermath. But, I would still say that, with the money that I put in, the publicity we got and the connections that both me and you had to promote the events and whatnot, it was well, I guess you can't call it a success, right? but it did do something, some kind of, we spread awareness, for the Finnish Pro Wrestling, I would say.
So I remember you had all of the bus stops in the Uusimaa area. So like the Uusimaa area covers, for those people not like listening from outside of Finland, it covers Helsinki, Vantaa, Espoo, and some of the towns or the smaller little cities, but I would call them towns, like within, let's say, a 50-kilometer radius around Helsinki. So the thing is, you had all of the bus stops in that area, because I remember that deal, and it was horrendously expensive. It was something in the neighborhood of about 30,000 just to run 1 week of bus stop ads. It was like off the freaking charts. And I was thinking to myself, oh, fuck, with all this overhead, how are we going to make a profit on this show? You would have, because the thing is, the reason I say that the Culture House was not sold out is because I've been to the Culture House when it's been sold out. For example, like announcing or like doing the commentaries in English for Cage MMA, and I know what that place looks like when it's sold out. And I know for a fact that we were not sold out at Culture Shock. I know that is a crystal clear fact that I know for sure.
Yeah. It's of course a possibility, and most likely a fact. but I do remember getting a let's call it a false. I don't want to say false hope, but I do remember that coming out of it, that I was feeling positive that that we had enough people to kind of create buzz, and then that it quote unquote looked full, or whatever you want to call that, right? So, but yeah, I do remember that was. One of if you want to compare those two events, that was the better of those two events.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, throughout this, I mean, also, Dylan, you have to remember that we did this before any social media. I had to create something called Valhalla Pro Wrestling Street Team, and I was able to have, or we were able to have, for that matter, a individual person or a representative of the brand in different cities and towns located around Finland, and also outside of Finland as well. And we would send them T-shirts and free tickets for those events, and they would put posters at the bus stops or wherever and promote it locally, or help promote it locally. And so I mean I think that was an accomplishment in a way. That we had to kind of use our brain at that time, because there was no smartphones or anything like that, and we did whatever we could to get the word out. Also, we had some TV spots at Sub TV, because we did shoot at the Culture House a TV commercial. I don't know or a TV spot. I don't know if
I still got it. I got it on VHS still.
Right, exactly. So, obviously, when you don't have a brand, people are not going to come, or if they don't know it about it. If it's just Wrestling XYZ, it could have just well as been Wrestling X, Y, and Z in a way, because nobody really, there was, WWE, when they came to Finland, there was, it's been on TV in Finland, even though I grew up in the US, but I heard that it had been in Finland for 10 years at least. And you had name recognition of Hulk Hogan and things like that, who were attached to the brand. And as soon as they came to Finland, I mean, it was definitely sold out, that 2002 live event. Mm-hmm. So just to go, to the bad luck. I mean, we had, a minivan full of pro wrestlers going to our training session from the airport, and we had both of the minivans crashed. So we had guys, I don't know if you remember, guys in the hospital already for the first event.
Oh yeah, I remember Makoto.
Yes,
he almost caved in his skull, because the thing is,
correct.
He was sitting. The story is that, I mean, he was sitting in the back seat with some of the other guys, and when the van crashed, the taxi van, his head, because of the sudden stop, mm-hmm. he flew out of his seat and he hit the back of his head into Bjorn Sem's skull.
Correct.
From Norway, Big Bjorn Sem, and he fractured his skull. He dented Makoto, that is, dented his skull. He still to this day has an indented skull from that wow. mishap. Wow. It was like I'm amazed that he lived, because just think, Dylan, by the way, that Bjorn, to this day, Bjorn's a very good friend of mine, is that to show how tough of a guy Bjorn is, and Bjorn in Norwegian means bear. Now, Bjorn, you got to think, he had another wrestler in the back seat flying through the air in the crash and smashing his head into the back of Bjorn's skull. Bjorn was banged up when he came to the venue with another guy from Norway, a big guy. His name was Pat, you probably remember what he was. He had some Arabic blood.
Right.
What was his name now? It was, Anyway, but the thing is, he used to be one of the early heavyweight champions in Norway. I forget his name right now. I'll get to it probably more or less. But anyway, the point is, Bjorn and the other guy wrestled that night against Johnny Merlin and Easy Rider, Joni Myrsky, in that Finland versus Norway tag.
Correct.
Regardless of the fact that they were beaten to like almost a pulp in that accident hours before.
And just to touch up on another person who, may he rest in peace. There was another gentleman came through Easy Rider. If my memory serves me correct, he was a MMA fighter who became trained.
He's still alive.
No.
Benna. No. Psycho Skin. He's the one he's the one that died.
Psycho Skin. Exactly. Yeah. Psycho Skin. Yeah.
Yeah. Psycho Skin, who was a friend. He was a training partner of Joni Myrsky. Now, for those people who don't know, Joni Myrsky, and if he's listening, then hey, how you doing, Joni? It's nice that you follow us and drop me a line sometime. But the thing is, Joni was a former freestyle champion. Freestyle wrestling champion in Finland. He had gold medals and bronze medals in freestyle. So the guy is a legitimate, like serious wrestler's wrestler. And he was one of my assistant coaches when I was the head coach for Valhalla Pro Wrestling or for Battleground Valhalla, our training school. He was one of my assistant coaches alongside Johnny Merlin, a.k.a. What's his name? Jani Hautala. So or Hautamäki. And anyway, the point being that this other guy that you're referring to, he was a bald guy.
Yes, exactly.
Under the name of, I gave him this name Psycho Skin because he had these eyes. The guy had the same intensity as Kurt Angle.
Correct.
He was freaking scary. He was muscular too. And he was a maniac. And the thing is, this guy could have been somebody. He was a natural. And the thing, and he had some, I don't know if they were drug related or if they were some other issues that he had, but he ended up committing suicide about, was it a year later, within a year?
Yeah.
And that, so that was that. But Joni Myrsky was the guy who wrestled for the Finnish team alongside Jani Hautamäki, a.k.a. Johnny Merlin, on that first show against the Norwegians.
But throughout the summer of 2003, he also trained a lot of the guys who were, in our Battleground Valhalla program, wrestling program school, I would say.
Yeah.
And I remember some of those guys had some minor roles in the first event as well. Amon, I think, had, and his brother.
No. Amon did not wrestle. He didn't. And then his brother is a good friend of mine to this day, actually. No, they did not wrestle.
They were backstage.
Yeah, they were only there as backstage hands.
Right.
Yeah.
So throughout the summer, we were building things, and I do remember booking Culture House already in May 2003. So that was kind of pre-planned as to be the first event, and also for, of course, Baltic Brawl. So I do, bear responsibility for booking those a little bit earlier, and just to go, not to jump too much back and forth here, but, the week before Baltic Brawl, when we knew the exact ticket figures, we could have moved that. We had the option to move it to Culture House. They had the space available. And I remember it was me, Mika Sikila, and the third board member, who's, one of my best friends still to this day, who also built our ring. He's a certain factory owner in Finland. But in any case, we were at the Katajanokka in Helsinki. It's like a little island, where you go through a little bridge. And we were at the end of that because I had a boat at that time as well, and we were sitting at my boat.
Yep.
In the dock, and we just sat there and drinking, cognac and whatever, just trying to or whiskey because it was a cold night, and trying to stay warm. And they kept saying that, Mika said, you should just move it to Culture House. And I was adamant that we would get what do you call them? Like walk-in tickets, through the
walk-up,
gate, the gate, walk-ups. Yeah, I was certain of that the which StarBuck already brought up earlier about the bus stand commercials or ads, that we had throughout the city or the region, the county or whatnot, and the TV spots and radio. So I was adamant that people would show up, that we would have that 1,000 people come, walk in, or 2,000. I was naive enough to think that, unfortunately. And
Pat, I got to cut you off. You didn't need 1,000 people. What you needed, I still remember our discussions very distinctly, and it was that for the Helsinki Ice Hall, the old Helsinki Ice Hall. That's where this past year, 2019, when WWE came to town. That's where they played. Okay?
Correct.
And they had 4,000 people there. You know how much we had? Do you remember, Pat, how many people we had at Baltic Brawl?
If my memory serves me correct, we had about 1,600 total.
That's right. We had about 1,500. The thing is, I remember you told me that I asked you, what's your overhead for this show? Because we'll get into this in a second, but you had some really big names that you were planning to bring in for that. And I remember those. And the thing is that I remember you were going to do a pay-per-view. You're looking into actually doing some type of pay-per-view. We'll get into that in a second, but this is really ambitious stuff. I mean, Dylan, I'm sure he's
for the
just
time being.
Dylan's picking his brain as he's listening to this stuff because this is bygone history, but
No, I'm loving it. I got a few questions and a few statements when you guys are in a good moment.
Yeah, we're gonna.
I don't want to stop you.
Yeah, we got to give Dylan a moment to pitch in here in just a second. But I remember, Pat, that when you ran that Culture Shock and we had that meeting on your boat, the thing is that I was saying, like, how many people do you need to break even? You know what you told me? Do you remember what you told me?
If my memory serves, it was about 3,200. I knew that we needed double at least double.
No, you told me we need 5,000.
That's possible. Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, and because the thing is that place holds 8,000 if it's full, and you needed 5,000 to break even on the losses that were incurred for the 1 month earlier for Culture Shock, and for the overhead, and for all of the advertising and the overhead and whatnot that we did for Baltic Brawl. So in other words, on that, and I was saying, and Miko was saying to you, and some other people were saying that, hey Pat, you got to downsize. You got to go to the Culture House again.
Yeah,
don't do it.
I remember that.
Yeah, and the thing is that, and you were like adamant. You wanted.
Yes,
you were like,
I vetoed them. I vetoed everybody else. I
exactly.
The Joker card, and I said no.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, and I remember it's like that was your downfall, because then when the actual date came around, or the show rolled around, we didn't even have a freaking camera crew. We had a ramp. We had big screens. We had everything, but we didn't even have a fucking camera crew to tape the thing for posterity.
Yes.
So it was a major fuck up and a major snafu and the way that it actually turned out at the end. And then I remember, at the end of it all, once you were. 1 second here, my Facebook is ringing off. I hope this doesn't make it onto the recording here. But so I remember that at the end of the night, not only did was Alan Funk, a.k.a. Kiwi from WCW, not only did he almost die on that card in Helsinki, he broke his orbital rim when Sonny Siaki did a split-legged moonsault, and he crushed his face with his knee. And I remember I told you before that card, I said, Pat, make sure you have MTs at that event, EMTs. I said that if anything happens, you got emergency personnel on hand. And thank God you took my advice. You went the extra mile and you had them on hand, because had you not, Alan Funk might have died in the dressing room that night.
That's true. That's true. It was a horrific scene that I'll never forget, even with my concussion.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is that, but anyway, I remember after that show, we had this thing where I was looking at the entire kit and caboodle of, as we wrapped up that night, and I thought, 1,500 people. Oh man, this is a loss if there ever was one. And the wrestlers were really nervous because not only because of Alan, but because they realized that this show just flushed, and they were lining up like they were following you. I remember Shane Douglas followed you like a shadow. He would not let you out of his sights. And it's like he followed you all the way to the ATM to make sure he got his money. I remember it was a bad situation, but the thing is that what made you, my question here is this: why did you go to such lengths, like with the first show, with Culture Shock, and then even with all of those losses that you incurred and you rolled them over to the next show? Why did you go for broke so that at the end of 2003, Valhalla Pro Wrestling was 1 million old Finnish marks in the hole? What was the thing that, and how did you, what was the reasoning that you had doing this? Because you were, the how could you say, the big kahuna in the sense that was your operation and you were the one bankrolling it. So what made you do this?
Well, basically I had when I was younger, I always had a lot of pressure from my family. What I mean by that is that, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So my both grandfathers, were retired entrepreneurs, very extremely successful in Scandinavia, who sold in Norway and Sweden and Finland. And then my father or my parents, were retired entrepreneurs. And, my father made his first million, when he was, by the time he was 23, and, had 2 Porsches and all these things. And, they, always grinded and super honest. And, StarBuck met my parents many times, and my parents to this day talk very warmly about StarBuck, and they actually loved him. Wow. My dad was such a big fan of StarBuck. Oh no, of course. I mean, they met you at both events, especially at Culture Shock and whatnot. And, my dad still wears your T-shirt at our summer house in Finland during the summer when he cuts mows the lawn. So, as we have a lot of those T-shirts still available, still left in the storage from those times. I actually still need to give you those, one of these days. But point being, I had a lot of pressure to succeed. I felt, I obviously already had my staffing company. I wasn't, only a year after the Valhalla program, let's call it, folded. I was, doing really well with the staffing company because I was then focusing on that and whatnot. But yeah, I just kind of, I wanted to prove to my father. I remember the night after Baltic Brawl, and I was devastated. And, I remember that, have a meeting with my parents, just, cause they were there and they saw it didn't go well. And I just remember saying to my father that, that I tried to kind of, fill his shoes in a way, because, there's a book that's written about my dad a couple of years ago in Finland, a business book. He was a highly successful, self-made person coming, after the Second World War, and worked, the usual 3 jobs and, built something for himself and for the family. So I just, I've always been an entrepreneur person, like I said, on a summary, started with the parties, organizing parties when I was 15 years old. In the US, we would, in Florida, take up a big field somewhere. I had one guy, I paid somebody to get the kegs. Another person brought the band over, and we were there at some strange field, middle of nowhere until the cops showed up, and then going to organizing parties after, my military service in Finland, because they sent me on Army draft to Florida. And that's why I ended up back in Finland. And after, Army service, it's all about girls. And like I said, organizing the parties and then going to the Fight Club stuff. Then, my staffing company I already started back in, also 99 after the Army actually, but that wasn't really my passion. And, professional wrestling as a fan, it was exciting, and I thought that, there was a void, so to speak, of sure there is, as it's still going to this day. But, I was too ambitious. I didn't have the right, mindset. I was naive, obviously. I was very young and I was very hard-headed. I remember me and StarBuck, hitting heads, bumping heads off and on. And obviously nowadays we would both do things differently. But, he had his thing and I was kind of responsible for my end. And, I guess egos play a part as well. But yeah, I definitely messed up. Of course, I own it. And I should have if you look at the events nowadays, that are in Finland, that's the route we should have done. And should have just stuck with those basically and built it from there. But by the time Baltic rolled out, September 27, 2003, a date that I'll still remember. Once I had committed, after that meeting at the boat, I kind of knew it was go big or go home, right? And I was, I guess you could say, I don't want to use the word desperate, but you were desperate to succeed, that you can kind of at least do a plus minus, right? And so some of those things were you're living in the hope that, like I said, that you hope that the people will do the walk-ins from those that night. We only ended up having like less than 100 or less than 50 maybe. I remember it was dismal. It was dismal. I remember going back and I was so shocked.
But Pat, I remember why too. The reason why we didn't draw was because your PR guy from Culture Shock, there, because of the financial difficulties that were incurred after the first show, you failed to make payment on the guy to the guy that was doing your PR. And the thing is that he refused to do a single thing to do any PR for Baltic Brawl, which is why.
That's right. Yes,
exactly.
Correct.
And that was the reason why, because we were left basically with like maybe a couple of radio spots. That was it. I mean, we had way more lead up publicity to Culture Shock than we did for the big show for that Baltic Brawl. And that was the reason I think that we flushed.
And also, WWE came a month after. They had an event a month after, if you remember as well.
Oh, yeah.
And they sold out basically that event.
No, Pat. That they went to Turku that year.
Exactly. That year,
2000. Yeah. That was Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar in the main event too. But the thing is that they went to Turku and they didn't sell out in Turku. They had a good house, but they did not sell out there.
Okay. But okay, let's say 7,000 or 6,000 or thereof. But I do remember that hurting the ticket sales, and they were, on Sub TV, and they were heavily promoting the event. And like I said, now I understand how to build a brand. I still have another business, so I understand what it takes to build a brand. How do you do it? And until you have a brand, you cannot really have high expectations, like I had back then. And I just, you think you're part of my French, but you think you're the shit, when you're young, you think you're invincible as well, and things like that. Many things, of course. And it's not just one thing, but I wouldn't call it, I don't think I hope you don't remember. I've never been an arrogant person or a cocky person. It's nothing like that. I think I would say more, naive, and then just too much hope, putting too much eggs in one basket in these things, and just trying to really make something for everybody where I wanted to live up to, I guess, expectations that I set for myself. And like I said, a lot of it was coming from how successful my parents were, and things of just kind of, building myself up, I guess. I wish I would have had more time to think about these things. Like I said, got the message earlier today about, 5-6 hours ago. So, but yeah, it's definitely a combination of things. It's not just one thing, of course. And definitely when that snowball effect began, it was just bad luck after bad luck after bad luck. And, but my best friend to this day, who was at the event, who built the ring, he always says, hey, it could have gone the other way. He said, when I always, if we're having a cigar and a whiskey somewhere and I, say about it, and he just says, hey, Pat, it could have gone the other way. What if the people showed up? What then? So,
I'll interject now, just to get my little thing in here. But I just, the biggest thing I want to say is because it is hearing all this stuff, and I know some of the history in all that just from being around the business in Finland these days, and I just have to say, about how much respect I have for you, Patrick, and for StarBuck, of course, because you guys, whether this failed or see it as a failure or whatnot, it really, in my eyes, this is like the proper beginning of professional wrestling in Finland. And I think that people need to really understand that pro wrestling is very difficult to bring into an area that has no history. And you guys had all the balls in the world to try it and to go as big as you did. And I think the whole hindsight being 2020 and, and having now the idea of how to build a brand and all that, I don't know if, if I would have personally done it any different in that way, that you would have wanted to just bring the biggest show you possibly could. And I really commend you for having the guts to do that kind of thing. And, to me, this is like, in the end of the day, that this is what started it all. And as much as it's been you guys, StarBuck and the crew of people that he's trained and enlisted in the whole pro wrestling crusade or whatever it is. It all started there. I think the true start anyway. So I would pat you guys on the back really hard, and I definitely wouldn't beat yourself up. Of course, it's really difficult, especially when money is involved and the people just don't show up. You could have the best show in the world, and the people just might not show up. And
true,
I myself promoted wrestling in Toronto, in Canada, and it was really hard. I definitely came into it thinking, there's this big void in terms of the style of wrestling in Toronto. There was a lot of the kind of more clownish things going on at the time, in around, let's say, 2008, 2009. And I was really wanting to see more of, at the time I was a really big ECW fan, and that had kind of disappeared. And when it got bastardized by the WWE and things, I wanted to see like proper gritty wrestling, and not so much, guys lighting themselves on fire and throwing themselves in through barbed wire glass houses or things. I wanted to see like the real deal pro wrestling like it used to be. And I tried to put on, I thought it would be a shoe-in. I thought people would be all over it. And one mistake after the other. And finally, I ended up putting on also 2 shows as big as I could, financed by myself. And they were, good wrestling shows, but it didn't draw enough people. People wanted the ridiculous wrestling that I didn't want. And, of course, a few years later, that's the stuff that became popular in Toronto. And maybe I was doing it too soon or didn't know how to build the brand but I really, of course, I didn't have these kind of shows where you have guys like legends like Shane Douglas and Steve Corino, AJ Styles, and this giant list here is just crazy for me to think that you had been able to even get these guys.
Sabu,
Sabu, one of my all-time favorites to watch back in the day, and just blew my mind. I've seen him live in these small little events in Toronto as well, and wrestling with a broken jaw or whatever he's got broken on him that day. And, it's just one of these crazy things that I really commend you, both of you, for being able to put this on. And I know you guys had the intention was to bring pro wrestling to Finland with the biggest bang you could possibly deliver. And you did, so it's this is all leading up to the big question that I've, been asking a lot of people in Finland, because since I came here and found out that there is pro wrestling here, and I wondered, like, what is the reason why you think that it's so difficult to sell, proper pro wrestling to Finns? Like, what are they so afraid of or put off by? And, is it that it's the idea of selling a fake fight, or what is it about pro wrestling that doesn't seem to translate as of yet in the mass numbers to Finnish people?
Well, first off, I'm humbled, and I really appreciate all your comments and what you just said. We definitely had moxie and brass balls at that time. So I really, really appreciate that. And I actually thought about that afterwards, and because it's kind of interesting, because in one hand it does draw, when there's WWE, you get the families and you get, people of all ages, right? And all kinds of people coming for the events. And then if you do an independent show, you don't get so many people, or a nowadays, local brand or whatever, that it's more difficult to grow. And I actually have tried to think about that, or thought about that, throughout the years. And I think one of the first things I learned in Finland when I came from the US was, I remember the first night as a bartender working, just before I went to the army, I made more tips in one night than the people have made it throughout the year. And that was just because I was outgoing, extrovert, and just, serving the people and enjoying my work. And I learned jealousy, Finland, jealous. I never experienced that in the US growing up. And that was my first kind of like touch in Finland, was jealousy, that nobody else can be successful, and whatnot. Of course, I had seen that with my parents growing up, and whatnot. But Finns are very skeptical people, from what I learned. They question everything, and skepticism when it comes to, pro wrestling, about this kind of fakeness or whatever you want to call that. Definitely not for me. It's not fake, but I've seen the injuries and what happened to StarBuck as well in the ring, and I was in the ring myself as well with actually StarBuck. Oh, I mean, I was with Starkadder. That was later, a couple years after. But then I did take a good whopping from StarBuck, and So anyway, skepticism definitely plays into it, and I think it's a combination of things. Brand and what kind of program you can put. And I remember we were debating, because we went to the TV channel Urheilukanava in Finland, like the sports channel, and we had that tape going there. I remember going with the PR guy, and they got it for okay, but we're going to play it for free and this and that. But you definitely need a TV show to build a brand in anywhere in Europe, for that matter, or anywhere in the world. That's my opinion about pro wrestling. You have to, because I remember in the summer of 2003 that we have to have that TV show going forward for it to survive and succeed and actually build something. A brand, obviously, but yeah, skepticism definitely plays a part, and it's StarBuck knows better than I do. Finland is a heavy metal place.
Used to be.
Okay, now it's changing. I haven't been in Finland for a long time, but right. So at that time, at least, so that was kind of like, it was known for the genre, and then let's say North America and Mexico is known for pro wrestling in the way that that's like the area. So I still this day meet other pilots in my current profession who've gone to Finland, and they went there 20 years ago, 15 years ago. They said, oh yeah, we went there when I was younger, and oh my god, yeah, all the Finns they love heavy metal. So I think certain areas just like things. I mean, if you think about Norway or Sweden or Denmark, pro wrestling in those countries also has not. It is, I think, bigger than in Finland in certain ways. At least the photos from the venues and the videos I've seen throughout the years. I think there's maybe, I don't know, StarBuck can correct me or not, but maybe 500 people per event at those events. And so, yeah, it's just a combination of things, a cultural thing. The way I would do it is I would do exactly like StarBuck has done now. I commend him for doing that, and he already knows that. And as we spoke a year ago or whatever it was about that, but some way, somehow, I mean, like if you look at NWA now, how they're doing it with the YouTube TV show, we didn't have YouTube back then. We didn't have any of those things. Nope. So the only way to get out was to get a TV deal. But definitely some way, somehow to get a TV show and start building that brand and then build around that. I think that's the way to go with any professional product.
I agree. I agree with you, Pat, because the thing is that, like I've said for the longest time, that even though YouTube is 80% male demographic, and that's a proven fact, by the way, that's not disputable. The thing is that still, for whatever strange reason, even though on-demand entertainment has, by and large, changed the face of the entertainment landscape. So you got like Netflix, you have HBO, and you have all these different streaming services that have come in, and they have, at least the men, have transitioned over to these different formats. Men do not watch traditional television anymore. At least in Finland, it's the way it is. I know this for a fact because I tried to pitch several years ago, and I would say about 5 years ago, I tried to pitch pro wrestling to the Finnish TV channels. I had a hell of a good concept. I'm not going to give it away now here for free for other people to hear and try to steal and shit, because it's just, there's so many, by the way, Pat, you were saying that in Finland, that there's so much jealousy. And it's so true, because even the people that I brought up in the business in Finland from all the way from 2003 to modern days, I've had so many of these fucking snakes try to stab me in the back and sabotage me. And it's unbelievable. It's like just the jealousy. And one of my friends once said that, just remember, jealousy is earned. You have to earn jealousy. And it's like people don't just, they aren't jealous of you for no reason whatsoever. So they're already underneath you when they get jealous. So that's all. That's all fine and dandy. But fuck them all. The ones that have tried to stab me in the back. Honestly, I was like, the thing is, they don't even know. When you think of the people that, if there's anybody from outside of Finland who would ask, that how's this one wrestler from Finland, or how is she as a wrestler, as a person, whatever. Who do you think they're gonna fucking ask? If they turn to anybody for advice and they want somebody to give them a heads up on somebody else, who do you think 9.9 times out of 10 would be the person that they would ask? You're talking to him right now. So the thing is that when these people who've tried to like stab me in the back throughout the years have done their dirty deed and they've done their unwitting stupidity, what they haven't realized is that they're basically trying to fuck the only person that could help them out. Don't shit where you live, and don't bite the hand that feeds you. So, but the thing is, that putting that aside, my point here is that that it, by and large, still in Finland, how it's so strange that even in this day and age where Netflix and HBO and all these different things have taken over the landscape of at least male viewing demographics, that television still dictates the death or the life of any said media persona or personality. And I don't understand how this is possible, because I say this now because WWE called me last year. From the UK, their UK branch called me, and they said that they're coming to the Nordics, and they're going to set up some meetings with different channels and different media outlets. And they asked me that, what do you think is why is the Nordics such a hard cookie to crack? Why is it? Because they've been trying to crack this area of the world for the longest time without success. They've had wrestling up here. WWE's been on TV, as you said, Pat, since the mid '80s, right? So, or since the late '80s on Sky Channel. It's been here, but they've not been able to actually make this area of the world a regular stop on their annual touring schedule. They come here once in a while. They come here, I mean, the last time that SmackDown was here is 2009. They came back in 2019. That's 10 years.
Right.
So the thing is that when they ask me, what is it that in my opinion, that the media landscape here, the people here, what is it that they want? And I thought to myself that, the funny thing is that the Finns, not only are they very, or maybe just the Nordic people, but especially the Finns, not only are they very jealous, but they hold sports to be a very holy thing. So the thing is that for them, sports is pure. It's either 100% or it's nothing at all. And that's the problem that I think the pro wrestling faces here in the Nordics, is that because it's a bastard child, it's an island unto itself. It's not really sport and it's not really entertainment. It's something in between. It's like an island unto itself. And I think that most people have a real hard time understanding this. They have a really hard time digesting this. And that's the problem that pro wrestling faces, like overall in the large picture, in the big picture.
Yeah, I completely agree with that assessment. And Dylan, if you just allow me to go a little bit back and forth here, I took some notes here. Oh, the great one spoke.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring just something about, my and Buck's relationship when the whole thing first started was that, I don't know if StarBuck remembers or not, but I came, I think it was December 2002 or January 2003. But I remember, like, when we first met, he had like concert. Well, his band was playing, at Tavastia and On the Rocks and other places. I went by myself to those I was there the whole way by myself, watching him play and so on. And I was genuinely trying to get to know him, because this was the guy who we were going out to conquer the world, so to speak, of at least Finland, or so we thought. But so I don't know if he remembers or not, but I came several nights. I actually, that's why I don't want to say what I earlier wanted to say about, I was not cocky or arrogant, naive, yes, but and then of course during the summer of 2003, me and StarBuck, butted heads on, creatively and whatnot. But before that, I was going to his gigs at different places and really trying to. I remember driving to his place one time also in the springtime when we were building a ring and going there. He was chopping some wood or whatever, and we were just talking normal stuff. And he was giving me tapes to watch, a list of what should I order. And I ordered the tapes from, North America, and they came over, the list. And so, I just wanted to make a point that for the listeners or people that there was, I was trying to build a personal relationship with StarBuck, back in those early months. So it wasn't all just business, per se. But, and then about, what StarBuck brought up earlier about the pay-per-view stuff for Baltic Brawl, I put a note here that they were asking 20,000 euros to stream it online. So we basically people could have bought it on our own website and, a few other websites that were available at the time, and have a online, and that would have been worldwide available for purchase, by the way. Let's say it would have been $30 or 40 or euros for that matter. But I didn't pull the gun, because at that moment I knew the ticket sales had not, after the meeting I had with that company, the ticket sales were not, soaring. So I could not bring up any more costs, add to the tab per se, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the reason why I pulled the plug on doing the pay-per-view stuff, because it would have I didn't think that it would have, because like I said, 20,000, and then how much you have to sell to cover that 20,000 to make a profit, right? So
that's a lot.
Yes. And obviously we were ahead of our time. I mean, we were selling Dylan ringtones. So you could go to our website and order StarBuck's ringtone or other people's ringtones. And so we had a lot of that. So we were, I mean, in a way, ahead of our time. You know, we did a lot of, like I said, merchandising, because I was looking at what, WWE at the time, of course, not WWF, but I was looking at what they're doing, and I was kind of trying to emulate, you know. I don't want to use the word copy, but take the best things that work and how to make it work. So, okay, so they got merchandising, you know, sponsors and all these things and whatnot. And I should have, of course, I remember having discussions with Mika Sikila about having the sponsors cover all the cost, you know, finding sponsors, but the people we met, or I met myself or Mika Sikla was trying to find, we didn't have a brand attached. So they really couldn't. They said, yeah, okay, we can sponsor you, but, you know, we'll give you 500 or 1,000 or something very small, right? So that wasn't really also an avenue for us. But another thing, what I wrote here was the injuries for the guys, which we already touched on earlier. So we actually had also the Japanese gentleman also got hurt. I don't know if Starbuck remembers, but yeah, so he was also in the hospital. He was also in the hospital. And so we just had bad luck after bad luck. So it was those two guys ended up in the hospital afterwards, and they were both in Finland for like a month after. They were for a long time. And I remember going to the hospital and dealing with the insurance papers and everything. And it was because basically the insurance company was, and I remember years later, Starbuck either explained to me or during that time or afterwards reading what he wrote on Facebook or somewhere about his injuries and talking to insurance companies, how to cover them. Because I remember when I was doing my insurance claims after the Baltic Brawl event, that genre didn't exist for the insurance company, even though we had insurance, but it didn't exist. So it was a rough and tumble just to get them covered. And they didn't want to do it, obviously. And so luckily, that was a silver lining that I was able to pull the insurance for the guys and, at least cover their hospital costs because they were at a private hospital. It was in Punavuori.
Yeah, I remember because Alan Funk was there for a week, and then he flew out finally. He could have actually died with a blood clot in his brain, but he wanted to get the hell out of Helsinki. He wanted to go back home and just be with his wife. But anyway, Pat, we got under 10 minutes still of time here, so let's get to one more thing that I want to touch on from this time that we ran the early days of pro wrestling here in Finland with Valhalla Pro Wrestling, you and I. And the thing is that the names that you had slated for Baltic Brawl that you were throwing around, I have to throw them out here. I'm going to ask you quickly, just give me some bullet points on how in the world were you going to make this happen, and true or false. Now, Sting was one of the names, and supposedly you, from what I recall, you paid half of his guarantee up front just to secure him. Then you lost the guarantee because it fell through. Is this true or not?
Correct.
Dylan, did you understand we had Sting slated for Baltic Brawl?
I do. And that's such a... Oh, well, I know in terms of the promoter side of things, what a... just like slap yourself in the face kind of situation, because what can you do? The other thing I wanted to say earlier, just really quickly, is that bringing these guys to Finland is, kind of what you have to do, but it is ridiculously difficult. Yes. And, so, because first of all, you only have not even a handful of proper wrestlers that even exist in Finland, especially back at that time. So you can't have a show with those guys, and you need more than just one name value on the card. So trying to bring in those guys, you need them, and to get them to this country at that time, especially, and it's not really that long ago, but still. It's difficult and expensive, and when all of a sudden somebody like Sting will decide, I'm not going to go and keep the retainer or whatever the down payment or deposit. That is just so brutal, and you just have to shake your head, and mostly at Sting, because to take advantage of somebody like that, and I'm sure he had his reasons or whatever, but they probably can't really outshine what he could have done for the company. So I'm sorry to hear it.
In short, basically, I was in talks with Kenny Bolin and Jim Cornette in Ohio, OVW, and they put me in contact with a lot of these. We had APA, and we had we had other people who were willing to come, basically.
Pat, I got to ask you, I never understood. They were under contract. APA was under contract with Vince. How in the fuck were you going to get them to Finland?
Well, long story short, as we don't have much time. So basically, we had a lineup of WWE/OVW guys who were allowed to come, right? That's how it initially began. And then it turned that in the end, they were not allowed to come. So they put a stop. They said, nope, we're not going to. We're not going to send them in the end. And basically, there was a clause in the Sting thing that, and the others as well, where I lost in deposits, was that if you cannot make the full payment up front at a certain date of time, you just lose it. So there was nothing that anybody did, or their agents, nobody did anything wrong. And if you can't, put up, it's over. So it's just business, right? But yeah, it was kind of just, like I said, go big or go home.
Well, but Pat, three more names I got to throw at you before we finish up, because the thing is that these are big names, and you got to tell a really quick story for each one of them, because then people will understand that if we would have succeeded at this, if we in 2003 had we actually gone the distance and been successful, I think with these names we would have blown the roof off the place. But we didn't. So now, fantasy booking, this almost happened. Tell the story in just a nutshell. These next three names, these are the last ones for this interview. Why did these fall through, and true or false? Jeff Jarrett.
Spoke on the phone several times, and they were interested in doing a like a co-promotion. There were just talks about co-promoting, basically. And that was the talks just didn't go anywhere after that.
Okay. Bam Bam Bigelow.
Do not recall, to be honest. I do recall the previous question, but yeah, I don't. Maybe there was also money, or I honestly don't remember. I don't want to say because I don't remember that for sure.
Vader.
I believe that at that time we had a contact through I think it was called WWA, and the gentleman also
Jimmy Hart.
Yeah, this was through. I spoke to him on the phone. That one I do recall. Spoke to him on the phone, and he said, "Yeah, you can get Hogan and all everything and this and that." And super nice guy. And I just basically I didn't have the money in the end to do what we wanted to do, unfortunately. And it was all based on pre-ticket sales.
I remember, because the thing is, that was a conference call. I was on that conference call. We were at a bar, and we were on the phone with Dave Penzer and Jimmy Hart.
Correct.
That's
exactly
right. So, Dylan, there you have it. And the wrestling fans of the world, there you have it. The first promoter of Finnish Pro Wrestling, his name is Patrick Pesola. He's nowadays a flight captain and no longer in the wrestling business. But it was in 2003 that we began the ambitious venture that would be known as Valhalla Pro Wrestling and Battleground Valhalla, which by the name is is also the name of my book, my self-titled or self-written autobiography, which is still available through Crowbar Press, and you can get it as a Kindle version also. So I decided to call that book, also as a tribute to the beginnings of pro wrestling in Finland. I called it Battleground Valhalla. Battleground Valhalla. So there you have it. Patrick, any last words in closing as we wrap up today?
Well, I just want to bring up one. Well, there's several points that, when you start to reminisce, you do, start recollection, a lot of other things. And I remember driving up to Helsinki airport, picking up Kid Cash and others, AJ Styles, for the first event, and stopping along the highway just to puke because I was so nervous. meeting the guys, and then they getting back into the car, in the vehicle, and collecting them. But I remember getting weed for Sabu after the match that he had at the hotel. He said he wouldn't go anywhere until like them a bag of reefer, things like that. I mean, obviously, I was wholly unprepared for what I was going for money wise. If I would have had the money, I was going on too much hope, and then on pre-ticket sales for the big one, and then paying things up front that hoping to get more ticket sales to cover. And so you live and you learn. And I didn't try to hurt anybody or anything intentionally. Obviously, you're young and big balls, and you just want to go forward through rock if you have to make something happen. Very thankful and grateful for all the people who were a part of it. Many people in the street team shed blood, tears and sweat and everything else to make, from their point of view, everything happened. And of course, StarBuck, training the guys, and we were hoping to get those guys going after those events. But I was advised then to fold it up, and not to try it, even though that's what I initially wanted to do, and I had to follow the legal advice that was given to me at the time, unfortunately, and just focus on my flying and my other business. And here we are. But it definitely has been a pleasure talking to you both, and I'm trying to remember everything as best I can.
Okay, Pat, thank you so much.
Yeah, maybe we can have you on again to do part 2 or something, or you can lay your comments on.
That's definitely. Like I said, if I could have like a week to mull over this stuff, like I had in spring 2019, it's such a shame that didn't happen then, because I was so prepared to do this, in May of 2019, and I had prepared and everything. And after my car accident, obviously, having a severe concussion has affected my, long-term memory, of course, and short-term for that matter as well. But lots of stories still to go for sure. But that's about it for now.
Okay, Pat, thank you so much once again on behalf of Dylan and myself. This week on Shootin the Shizzat, it's been a blast talking about the beginnings of Finnish Pro Wrestling.